Welcome back. It is April now, April 10th, 2025. YieldMax announced their Group D distributions, as you can see in their X.com account. Just the main ones. MSTY was over $1.33. Amazon was almost 50 cents. Disney 30, Apple 30. A lot of them were pretty standard. And then their weeklies, we had YMAX at about 13 cents. YMAG a bit low at 9 cents, and Ulti always coming in around the 9 to 10 cent range. As far as percentages, or as far as reaction to these, I know I am about like a day late. I think it's ex-dividend day today. That said, payday will be on Friday for those invested. Just looking through, there has been definitely some market volatility with these. A lot of these ETFs do experience the downside, so there's definitely been some downside exposure, but the NAV's kind of been declining and rebounding and back and forth. The distributions continue to pay. So it looks like, MSTY, as I did in a chart before, MSTY's one of the, or I think the highest or most held YieldMax ETFs. So therefore, to expect a lot of commentary there. And then the weeklies, YMAX, and it's like somebody likes the LFGY as well, the consistency of the distribution. But that said, I took the payouts just to make sure I got the right ones. Let's do a check on MSTY. It was $1.33. And we got MSTY right here, or rounded up to $1.34. And then as far as what the percentages are, just make sure I got these formulas right. So the top ones are the weekly percentages. So YMAX is over 1%. LFGY was once again pretty solid, 1.26%. That's 65% annualized. Ulti, 8 cents, but with such a low NAV amount, that still comes in almost 1.5% for new investors. And then MSTY, one of the most held ones because the distribution is so large. We got 7.3%, very nice. And then, as I said before, 2 to 5%, pretty standard with some of these lower volatility names. It looks like AIYY was pretty good, 23 cents. I do note the NAV destruction there, but interesting, maybe something to explore. Someone's looking for a new one of these to buy. And then MSTY was once again pretty high at the 8.1%. I did not update, or I guess here's for those invested in the Roundhill weekly payers. Here's what those came out to be relative to their past weeks. These ones are pretty consistent in the 20 to 30 cent range. But looking to add kind of coverage to some of these other cover call ETFs. Everybody employs a little bit different of strategy, and it's nice to see them, see how they perform, mash them up against each other and see how they do. But one thing I wanted to add today is, so I created a website to track these and the relative performance, and you can see how they perform from inception. With these funds, there's some erosion in the NAV that happens, expected. But one of the main payouts or on the total return of these is the cumulative dividend. So I thought it'd be good to track the history of these and see how they performed from a total return perspective and visualize what the cumulative dividend is versus the current YieldMax ETF price. And then in addition to that, I wanted to also compare different strategies. If you buy the underlying stock, which these YieldMax single stock exposure ETFs are built on, or if you buy the YieldMax fund and just keep your dividends, don't reinvest them, just keep them separate, or if you reinvest the dividends at what the share price is of the ETF at the time of the dividend distribution. So I'll put this link. It's just a Google site, pretty simple to create for those who haven't created one of these. But I hooked it up to Tableau, ran some code, so these should update every day or so. So as the new dividends for new distributions are announced, you should be able to go out here, and I'll make this look a little nicer with time. But you got your 4 groups. I haven't done anything with the weeklies yet. That will be coming. But so here's Group D. And here's the ones I got right now. You can see Group D. The one I have not included the short one, the short NASDAQ. I'll have to construct how that's formulated here. A little different formulation. The other ones are just put on the single stock exposure. So with that said, MSTY. So MSTY's the big one here. I just wanted to show people exactly what an investment on this since inception would look like. And so MSTY was originated or inception date was early 2024. You can go to their website here if you really wanted to. Maybe I should check just to confirm before I dive into one of these. So basically I took the inception date, which you can see when the inception date was right here, February 2024. And from the dividend history, you can see their first dividend was paid out in April of 2024. So I basically took all that data, and I guess there's tabs up here. So you can go up here and you can click the tab. Hopefully the description of the tab gives you some insight as far as what it covers, but the distribution per share basically shows all the distributions that there have been since inception. You can see their latest one, $1.33. I wonder if they got that listed. Yeah, it does. It lines up with their $1.33 here. You can also see their first dividend was $4.12. So here you go, $4.12. So it shows the distributions since inception, in case you're willing to check that. See what the distribution performance has been over time. There's been some stellar ones within here, and then lately they've been around $1.30. But so the first half year this compares three scenarios: the non-reinvested dividends, owning the underlying stock, or the reinvested dividends. So MSTY, you would have started off with a $2,000 investment. Actually, it spiked right after it came out. I believe that is accurate. But you can see here, the best option would have been just to buy the underlying stock. But as far as reinvest your dividends or not reinvest your dividends, pretty similar exposure. But overall, everyone's been a pretty good investment, assuming a $2,000 starting value. We got the YieldMax ETFs have gone from 2,000 about 5,000 change. And if you would have just bought the underlying MicroStrategy or strategy now, we got a $7,000 investment. Although you can see here, these were, I guess, at the Bitcoin climax. Clearly owning strategy was a very good decision. But, and then I guess in addition to that, we also got this price. This is probably my favorite graph when assessing the total return of MSTY. It basically shows the light blue here is what the ETF price is. So you can see it started at 20, then rocketed higher, got up to the 40s, and then has cooled off lately, currently. And this data might be a day or two behind, but in the 18 or sub 20 range. So below where the initial price was at. But you can see green here basically takes the distributions from the distribution per share tab and adds them all together. So you can see as these climb, we've received a total cumulative dividend of $34.52. This was on a $20 initial investment. So pretty solid there. And it shows you the entire bar would be the total return. And it shows you the components of the total return. So even though the YieldMax ETF price is down, the cumulative dividend has added up to be a substantial amount. And this just shows you if you had taken your dividends and reinvested them in a MSTY as you've received them, you would have started with like 100 shares. That's my base point for this analysis. And 100 shares would have grown to 295 currently. So I'll see that exponential growth. And then here we got, this basically just kind of restates the data. But we got yellow bar here is just the distributions every time. So you can see $1.33. The light blue line is the closing price of the YieldMax ETF or the closing price of the MSTY fund. So you can see how that has trended over time. And the green, cumulative dividend, add it all together. And then if you take the blue line plus the green line, you get the purple line. So the purple line is what I would use to show the total return of MSTY since its inception date. We got some volume metrics, and then here's just the underlying price of the MicroStrategy or strategy. So you can see that and assess its performance relative to the MSTY fund. And this line should look very similar to this yellow line here. So it just breaks it out as an individual chart. But yeah, I guess you can go through all these and see how they've been doing. AMZY has been another one that's, I guess I should probably look at what the actual, at one point I did create a chart of the most widely held YieldMax ETFs. They should be updated for sure, or this is a few weeks old, so I'm not sure if it's still accurate, but let me just pull it up here quick. So I can just see of Group D, which, so if I pull this over here, You can see here's MSTY. MSTY was by far the largest, followed by NVIDIA, then Tesla and Coinbase, and then the YieldMax, the weekly one. When you get outside there, you can see Amazon or AMZY is a pretty widely held one, along with Facebook's AMDY. So in Group D, I guess we got AMZY, Aptly, SMCY is pretty big as well. AIYY has a few. So just keeping that in mind, here's AMZY. You can jump in here, should work, click the link, take you to the home page, and then you can either click YieldMax and then pick out Group D and which one you want. Or if you're on the home page, you can go to YieldMax, just click it. Group A, B, C, D. I do have a embedded, takes a little while to load for some reason, but a little embedded link to YieldMax Twitter feed. Comes up over, if you leave this page on for a while, it'll come up. Looks like it's loading right there, so shows you the recent dividends from YieldMax. But yeah, if you go to Group D, then you can go to whichever one you want. But Amazon, one of interest, this will be the last one I cover, and I think I'll call it a day. But you can see, since holding that, the actual return on these, so all these started at an initial value of $2,000, which would assume buying 100 shares of the YieldMax fund on its inception date, and it came out at $20 a share. So therefore, the initial investment of $2,000, and I took that and divided by the Amazon share price at the time to show how many shares that would equate to if you bought the underlying investment. But this one actually has been pretty, depending on what strategy you would have taken, it's been pretty equal over time, not a lot of variation. Currently, I can barely even tell which is the best option. I think with the recent market volatility, I think non-reinvested dividends actually is your best option. Turning $2,000 into $27.89, followed by owning the underlying stock, then followed by reinvesting the dividends. Their distributions per share, somewhat standard, kind of around, I don't know, if you put an average in here, we think like just above 50 cents a week or a month. And then price plus the cumulative distribution, so closing price of the ETF plus the cumulative distribution. Nice rise in the cumulative distribution. And ETF price has actually been somewhat stable for one of these funds on AMZY. Down a little bit recently with the market volatility, but overall somewhat stable from a YieldMax ETF price perspective over a decent amount of time. And this just shows all the variables compared. And then if you want to see what the underlying equity price is looked at, here's your recent volatility dump, which basically brought the reinvested dividend option as well as the underlying stock price. Basically brought those below the non-reinvested option. But yeah, just something to consider. I often see people ask, how do these funds fare against the underlying? And these charts here can give you a pretty good idea. So if it's something you want to look at, I find these helpful. I don't know if you do too. I'll probably be adding more stuff. I'll clearly add Group A, Group B, and Group C names, and I'll look to add the weekly ones as well. So you can see how those have fared over time. But yeah, I guess thanks for tuning in today, and I'll see you again.